And finally, on this week's edition of the program from the National Assembly, I will bring to you a public hearing on an investigation by the House Ad Hoc Committee on the mounting of telecommunication masts. Well, the House of Representatives is trying to find out if there are health hazards of mounting telecommunication masts in residential areas. The public hearing is in response to a motion moved on the floor by Representative Anayo Nnebe, urging the House to intervene in what he described as health hazards of mounting masts in residential areas.
It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this investigative hearing organized by the Ad Hoc Committee to investigate the health implications of the mounting of telecommunication masts close to buildings. This is in pursuant to the resolution of the House on Tuesday, 17 January 2017, on the motion calling for assessment of the health implications of the mounting of telecommunication masts close to buildings, which mandated the setting up of an ad hoc committee to undertake a thorough investigation of the motion so as to gather the opinion of the stakeholders and the general public for further legislative action. As noted at similar occasions in the recent past, investigative hearing is a governance window by the legislature in the promotion of citizens' participation in the lawmaking process and by implication in governance. Accordingly, I wish to encourage all the stakeholders here seated to participate zealously by offering their views and opinions without bias or hindrance, in the confidence that we are contributing towards the enactment of quality legislation that we all desire in our country. We must note that the safety of Nigerians should rate high on the priorities of our actions, as this is our primary constitutional responsibility. The House of Representatives and indeed the National Assembly will not allow the indiscriminate siting of telecommunication masts and base stations, as well as any other facilities where such is proven to be illegal and injurious to public health through emission of dangerous electromagnetic radiation fumes or noise pollution close to buildings and the ecosystem. For the avoidance of doubt, we are not debunking the fact that as a developing country, we desire to get the best from all developmental infrastructure as a quest for better service delivery and industrialization. Nonetheless, our economic development and the protection of our environment must not be antagonistic of each other, but should rather be symbiotic. Finally, I wish to reiterate that the House places a lot of confidence in the ability of members of this ad hoc committee to rise to the occasion and deliver on this very important national assignment in the shortest possible time. May I therefore formally declare open the investigative hearing on the ad hoc committee to investigate the health implications of the mounting of telecommunication masts close to buildings, and wish you all fruitful deliberations. God bless you all, and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
I am delighted, highly delighted to address you on the special occasion of the investigative hearing on the health implications of the mounting of telecommunications masts close to buildings by this ad hoc committee constituted specially to assess the matter. May I, on behalf of this committee, use this medium to thank Mr. Speaker, Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, and the entire leadership of the House of Representatives for giving us this opportunity to serve the House in particular and Nigeria in general. We pledge to discharge our duties diligently without fear or favor. Let me use this occasion to state emphatically that this hearing is not an avenue to be conservative with the truth, to the detriment of our people, the environment, and the economic development of our country. It is a hearing to gather all the necessary scientific evidence and decisions from local and international bodies, researchers, and experts to assist the House of Representatives in arriving at the best legislative decisions. However, no view will be regarded as not important. Therefore, be open and be sincere in your contributions. It is worthy to note that this committee has taken into cognizance the that there are conflicting findings in studies conducted to determine whether or not electromagnetic radiation EMR emitted by telecommunication masts and its associated equipments are injurious to human health and environment. We are also aware of the recent confusion between National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency, NESRA, and the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, on this matter, especially on the setback distance which telecommunications operators have to adapt in siting their masts close to buildings. P.I. Ejina and G.O. Anwere, in characterization of the radio frequency radiation potential of Alakia and Choba communities, Nigeria 2010, in their study, linked the cases of fatigue, headache, sleep disturbance, and loss of memory to the effect of electromagnetic radiation EMR on people living close to masts. On the other hand, Nigerian Communication Weekly Journal of 14th July 2008 stated that, and I quote, at the Nigerian Communication Commission's NCC monthly Telecoms Consumer Parliament held in Maiduguri on 2nd May 2006, Dr. Bashir Wandu, Executive Commissioner, Licensing and Consumer Affairs, NCC, who represented Engineer Enes Ndukwe, Executive Vice Chairman of the Commission, in response to an inquiry by a learned professor of the University of Maiduguri, made a clarification, amongst others, to the effect that there is no conclusive scientific evidence at present to indicate that radiation from telecommunication masts or handsets could cause such dangerous diseases as cancer among humans, unquote. Also, Shalangwa D.A., Vasira B.G., and Waba S.A.S. in 2011 on health risk of using global system for mobile communication, GSM, mobile phone, in their conclusions recommended as follows, and I quote, despite the fact that this study shows that it is safe to use mobile phone as additional margin of safety, the following recommendations can be put in place to avoid excessive exposure. Number one, when going to bed, switch off your mobile phone or keep it far away from you. Number two, avoid frequent contacts/calls or use microphones instead of placing mobile phones close to your ear. Number three, pregnant women should keep their mobile phones away from them. Number four, send your messages through text instead of regular calls, unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, can you see the dilemma? If I may ask, is electromagnetic radiation the only effect on human and environment as a result of telecommunications operations? Definitely the answer is no. Therefore, in the course of these investigations, stakeholders, operators, professional bodies, experts, researchers, government and non-governmental agencies, and the regulatory bodies are required to consider other aspects to ascertain their possible effects on the populace. For example, environmental, accidental, aviation, vibrations, etc., etc., either short-term or long-term, associated with installations of telecommunication masts and its associated equipment close to buildings. Finally, I wish to assure all the participants once again that your views and opinions will count in evolving the legislative framework and implementation strategies for ensuring a minimum health and environmental risk with reference, but not limited to specific absorption rates, SAR, noise pollution, air pollution, heats, smoke, and vibrations as a result of indiscriminate installations of telecommunication masts and base stations close to buildings in the country. Therefore, I welcome you to this public hearing and urge you to feel free to make your contributions fully and faithfully towards this cause, to enhance our healthy living in a conducive environment for technological development of our great nation. Thank you and God bless you. Long live the House of Representatives, long live the National Assembly, and long live the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The Director Technical Standards and Network Integrity of the Nigerian Communications Commission, Fidelis Honor, presented a contrary view.
It is understandable when people show concerns about health implications around masts, towers. Globally, different people and groups have expressed concerns about the impact of radiation from the wireless systems on health and the environment. To address these concerns, different study and research projects by individual countries, institutions, and multi-countries jointly working together have been going on over years. In our proactive regulatory notion, we have decided to license co-locators, that is infrastructure co-locators. These are operators that co-locate all the base stations, so you will not be having individual operators rolling out base stations. This is just to eliminate the proliferation of base stations. Our reasons for infrastructure sharing are numerous, which include efficient use of resources, environmental friendliness, cost reduction, reduction in proliferation of masts and towers to facilitate penetration and coverage. It is noteworthy that not all the masts or towers belong to telecommunications industry. It is pertinent to draw the attention of this committee to the issue of some conflicting factors in rolling out telecommunication services. In order to succeed in pervasive penetration and coverage of the telecommunication services, trade-offs need to be reached amongst the conflicting factors like electromagnetic wave propagation versus vegetation, mast installation, civil works versus ecosystem, coverage, quality of service, pervasive rollout versus right of way, etc. If these factors are not adequately addressed, without telecommunication services, the respective communities may be denied the benefits from the United Nations Millennium Development Goals initiative. The radiation of radio waves in the frequency band under consideration is within the UHF, and it is non-ionizing radiation with no residue as to depositing radiation particles after contact. Interphone study is one of the joint efforts by countries that was on for over 15 years. Interphone was initiated as an international set of case-controlled studies focusing on 4 types of tumors in tissue that most absorb radio frequency energy emitted by mobile phones. Tumors of the brain, parotid gland and acoustic nerve. The objective was to determine whether mobile phones increase the risk of these tumors, and specifically whether radio frequency energy emitted by mobile phones and base stations increase the tumor. The study was concluded in 2012. The report did not find any adverse effect on humans. However, it is advised that due to the limitations of the study and the incompleteness of human knowledge, further studies are encouraged, and it is advisable that contact with the headsets should be reduced rather than the headphones. Rather, it should be the headphones. Incidentally, people are more worried about base stations, but the phones you are having are also a little concerned. The base stations that we are talking about emit just about 20 watts of energy, of power, as against several thousands of watts of power as radiated by radio and television masts. This power and the propagation is inversely proportional to the distance, and that is square of the distance measured in meters. So it means that if you go like 10 meters, it will have reduced by 100 fold. Telecom masts are very necessary because we would need to have coverage of designated areas. There is also the report of World Health Organization. In their conclusion, it says, considering the very low exposure levels and research results collected to date, there is no convincing scientific evidence that the weak RF signal from base stations and wireless networks can have adverse health effects. Studies to date provide no indication that environmental exposure to radio frequency fields, such as from base stations, increases the risk of cancer or any other disease. This, incidentally, is also published in their website, which is accessible to everybody. The Nigerian Communications Commission has MOU with Federal Ministry of Environment and NESRIA, the National Environmental Standards Regulations and Enforcement Agency. And we all know where we do things, I mean, where our own mandates stop, and we have been jointly.
Please, can you summarize your submission?
Okay. Well, the report we have from WHO as well as Interphone and other results have not indicated any adverse effects.
It's unfortunate that Nigerians could go to any extent for selfish ends, in spite of the effect it will have on their fellow countrymen. My NCC man, I have a simple question for you. Is there any setback, minimal setback, of mast to residential or office buildings? Is there any standard minimum setback?
When we met with Nesria, we agreed on 10 meters.
Okay, sorry. Originally it was agreed 5 meters with whom? What was the basis of the agreement? And what is the basis for the change of that agreement? What was the basis for the initial 5 meters? And what necessitates the change to a new minimum distance? Okay. And why can't you go further? 2-3 questions on that. Yes. Briefly, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, honorable members, the initial guidelines of NCC is 5 meters. And let me just clarify something. The distance of the mass from demise has nothing to do with radiation. It's not in relation to radiation. But should there be a collapse? That was the basis. And from all happenings that we know about collapse of mass, they hardly collapse from the root. It's not that it can never happen, but they normally tilt and break in this form. So the 5 meters, 10 meters has nothing to do with radiation. It is because of the physical structure just near the demise of any building. When NCC came up with that, then later Nasria Act was passed by this honorable, by the National Assembly. In their own, they came up with 10 meters. That question has arisen. Why is the 10 meters? Then
you asked them why
after that,
meters.
We've all agreed that, okay, going forward from the time we had that meeting and agreement, let operators comply with the 10 meters, because the law said this act of the act of Nasria supersede any other existing, as normally the practice of this National Assembly. Once a law is passed, they say it supersede any other substituting law, legislation. On the basis of that, it was agreed that operators from that point should henceforth adhere to the 10 meters setback. But as I say, has nothing to do with radiation. As an engineer, I can tell you, has nothing to do with radiation.
Okay. Some communities are in some houses, people are mounting masts right at the center of the building. Where people live, there's mast mounted in most of those buildings. Then secondly, to what extent have you people disputed this idea of what happened in Choba and Alekaya community, that as a result of this radiation, that it characterized most of those things like fatigues, headache, and all these issues? Have you disputed what they've said in the local area?
First of all, we've all been traveling all over the world. If you go fly into any of the developed countries, you find out that you won't see any mast. But where are the antennas? The antennas are on rooftop, people's houses and offices. Here in Nigeria...
Please, 1 minute.
Yes.
Antennas are on rooftops.
Yes.
Rooftops are not closer to human beings. That's what you should know. Rooftops, if you take a distance of that antenna on the rooftop to human beings, is far beyond 10 meters. Bear that in mind. We've noted your discussion. Yes.
Okay, what I'm saying is, the setback has nothing to do with radiation. And we are talking about radiation, Mr. Chairman, here. As far as radiation is concerned, it is the same. The antennas are on rooftop, houses and offices where people live and work day and night. Here in Nigeria, the difference is this. We don't have enough tall buildings in our cities, and we don't have buildings that have the integrity to place the antenna. One. Secondly, we have the issue of power. All the base stations are powered by a generator. So when you put on somebody's roof, you need to put a generator to power it. You need to put a generator to power it. And that is why we have the mast became a necessity in our environment. The mast became a necessity because of peculiarity of our environment. But as far as cellular service is concerned all over the world, you need to have the antenna hung at a certain distance so that you have a coverage. And that coverage, that distance is given by the rooftop in areas where you have tall buildings that have the integrity to place the antenna. And people are sleeping and walking under that roof. In most cases, those rooftops are not up to even 15 meters high. They are directly
thank you. You've said
by the side of the building.
Yeah, you have said this all over.
My question is a very simple one. The NCC man said that they have 10 meters, that minimal setback. My question is this: have you been observing the 10 meters all around the country?
The Nigerian Medical Association, the Nigerian Society of Engineers, and some other environmental experts submitted that closeness of telecommunication masts to humans exposes them to some peculiar health hazards.
I'm here with a memorandum on the health implication of mounting telecommunication masts close to buildings. Mr. Chairman, telecommunications is the transmission of signs, signals, messages, writings, images, sound, media, such as cables or via electromagnetic radiation. Communications mast is a tall structure designed to support antennas with magnetic flux that are dangerous to human health and psychobiological reactions of the people who are living near mobile phone-based transceiver stations, BTS antenna, in Isfahan, Iran, was conducted in 2014, and the results showed that most of the symptoms, such as nausea, headache, dizziness, sleep disturbance, memory loss, of libido, were statistically significant in the inhabitants living near the base 300 meters distance compared to those living far. Results have shown that in its Donganon local government district, residents that are 1 to 5 kilometers from the mast have several number of cancer cases, including cancer of lungs, prostate, breast cancer, lung cancer, leukemia, lymphoma, and hematopoietic cancer. Respective regulatory bodies should continue to monitor the radiation levels emitted into the environment by the BTS of the telecommunications providers. The soil tests should be carried out to determine the soil condition and wind direction for the windbreakers before the proposed masts are installed, especially because of the incidences of collapse. The physical development control agencies in each Nigerian state, their Ministry of Physical Planning, their Urban and Regional Planning Board, staffed and equipped action and illegal development so as to promote a virile urban and sustainable urban development. They should, as a matter of obligation, ensure preparation and effective implementation of physical development plans. Mr. Chairman and distinguished honorable members of the committee, I have with me also in the team representatives of the Nigerian Institution of the Biomedical Engineering Study Group, the Nigerian Institution of Safety Engineers, and the Nigerian Institution of Environmental Engineers, and the Communication Engineering Study Group. They are also going to make further explanations from their various perspectives. So I thank you for this opportunity.
Our President has spoken well, and I hereby, on our own side, we recommend that it is strongly advised that the base stations be located sufficiently far away from residential and commercial buildings. And there should be massive sensitization that the use of Wi-Fi devices, laptop computers, mobile phones be restricted from children under the age of 8. 2. Further research should be carried out to determine the appropriate distance to the building for the establishment of base station and therefore pass into law. Lastly, it is also recommended that all installed masts should be maintained regularly by carrying out integrity tests painting of towers, reconstruction of bent towers, and other maintenance works to ensure safety of our lives. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I will just go straight to the recommendation we have here. The researchers already, many of the researchers are unsure of specific long-term effects resulting from this prolonged exposure to the non-ionizing radiation. So on this note, we want to say that a research should be initiated locally to determine the appropriate distance suitable for the mounting of masts. 2, the telecom provider should assemble their BTA, as been said earlier, at a approved location that is far away from the buildings. 3, government should make it by law that monitoring of radiation level within the environment should be carried out at regular interval. And lastly, sir, installation of masts within the hospital environment should be discouraged, if possible, as this affects the proper functioning of some medical equipment due to electromagnetic interference from telecommunication equipment. Interference with life supporting equipment has been established by some researchers that using electromagnetic radiation in the hospital is greatly affecting the medical equipment as it affects the diagnosis and the treatment of the patient.
Medical reports have shown that radiation from BTS are carcinogenic. They are capable of generating cancer cells in the human body, and this can result in children being deformed physically, and long-term exposure to this from BTS can affect reproduction, as my president has stated in his remarks. Environmental effects, we have structural safety of towers. We can see towers collapsing, like an event we have in Abeokuta on a hotel building with the attendant casualties. Also, the second effect is noise nuisance, noise pollution. At night, when you're expected to sleep and have a quiet night rest, you see this kind of noise that come out from masts that is very, very irritable. And we have the environmental pollution. There are leakages from these generators that are powering these masts, and we don't know what the operators are doing to checkmate, because you have children, most times, or sometimes they do go around there to play. So their exposure to this oil, which do have atomic properties, is not really encouraging. We have the radiation control. This is a known fact that microwave transmission is through radiation of waves that are dangerous to human lives. No known control is instituted for masts once installed. These masts, especially the backbone sites, are loaded with antenna and microwaves of different sizes and radiation capacities. We have not only concentration of these microwaves and antenna, we have concentration of clusters of masts and towers of various heights and loads. Finally, we have the skyline disruption. Most metropolises like Lagos, Ibadan, Aba, Kaduna, Enugu have been messed up by various masts and towers. This is dangerous for low-flying helicopters, monitoring drones, distress aircrafts. The skyline architecture has been overtaken by the mast, which is not seen in civilized countries.
The environmental engineers, having studied the health implications of the mounting of telecommunication masts close to buildings, hereby in line with the position of the Nigerian Society of Engineers as presented. We say further that the effects of electromagnetic radiation on human health are widely discussed both at the political and at the scientific level. Everyone knows the electromagnetic radiation can be dangerous. A variety of studies carried out has confirmed its harmful effects. For example, the results of the latest project of the World Health Organization confirms that the long use of mobile phones can cause cancer. The Environmental Division of the Nigerian Society of Engineers is hereby saying that the establishment of more telecommunication infrastructures, such as masts and base stations, has raised some environmental concerns, especially in the area of environmental impact assessment. It has become a part of the environment to sit on masts in different locations around the country. These masts, though helpful, are believed to have negative health effects on people living near where they are erected. We hereby say that telecommunication mast mounting close to buildings is dangerous to health of people. living in the building due to the effect of electromagnetic radiations emitted in the process of its transmission, a position that has been affirmed by the position and the submission of our interparental body, the Nigerian Society of Engineers.
The Nigerian Medical Association is so delighted and feels honored by this invitation to present a position paper on this issue, because the health perspective, which has been generating a lot of controversy, is very germane. In the developed world, where the use of GSM has been in place years before us, a lot of concerns on various health hazards posed by electromagnetic radiations emitted from GSM devices has led to various studies. The initial fear was dismissed as a hoax after some studies. However, lately, a lot of attention is being drawn to the radiofrequency radiation emitted from the base transmitter station. More studies have now shown that exposure to GSM radiations are linked to health hazards, such as fatigue, headache, decreased concentration, local radiation, sperm motility, and other effects like brain tumor and leukemia. Many countries currently follow the International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection, a German independent body guidelines set for exposure to radiation and siting of EBTS. The advantage of a telecom tower is that a single installed unit can be home to multiple telecom providers. Some aspects of the important guidelines are noted. While we don't want to go into talking again about the guidelines for both international and Nigerian regulatory agencies, which has been elucidated earlier, what we want to address here, are there any proven health hazards associated with radiofrequency radiations from base transmitter stations? In earlier response by the WHO in their international workshop on base station and wireless network, exposure and health concerns, held in June 2005 in Geneva, the conclusion made overall was that no clear evidence of the numerous listed deleterious biological effects could be associated with RFR from base transmitter stations, because exposure levels are very low. However, the WHO, recognizes the effect of telecom mast stations on sleep, blood flow, cognitive functions, and general well-being. WHO also recognizes the research work linking higher incidence and mortality of leukemia among children living with BTS, living within BTS vicinity. This now made WHO to uphold the precautionary principle. We will explain this in the course of this presentation. So many other studies have gone on, both isolated and in conjunction with other institutions. One is by EGA in November 2004, which links increased incidence of cancer to base station transmitter radiations. Also, we have those that connected with melanoma and others. A home study in Nigeria by Aderoju Olaide said that base assessment of the compliance of GSM operation in establishing base transmitter station in Nigeria, a case study, concluded that out of the 126 BTS stations sampled in AMAC Phase 1 and is failed the 10-meter and 12-meter buffer zone test, and only 7 BTS met the NESTRIA standard at 10 meters. Clark also talked on the effect of radiation on estrogen and melatonin metabolites among women residing near radio and television radio broadcasting transmitters, concluded that radio frequency and radio frequency radiations and temporarily stable 60 Hz exposures were associated with increased excretion among postmenopausal women. That's increased excretion of metabolites. Now, there are other research projects that have been done on the long-term exposure to frequency modulation and cell transmitters, and all of them indicated that there are some deleterious effects. Now, what are the health consequences of proximity to frequency modulation station and cell transmitters? A German study found a 3-fold higher frequency of cancer among people living in the vicinity, that is within 400 meters of a GSM base station, compared to people living further away from the antenna. The risk for mammary cancer, that's breast cancer, was 3.4 times greater, and the average age of contracting this disease was considerably lower, that's 50.8 years, than in the control group. The frequency increased also the longer people had been exposed to the radiation. So the proximity to this radiation is very important. The frequency increased also the longer people had been exposed to the radiation. The study covered a 10-year period, starting the year after the installation of the base station. New Australian research confirms health effect of base station radiation, despite exposure to radiation far below recommended levels. So even though we might have radiation far below recommended levels, because of some other effects, this can also have deleterious effects. Now, there is an entity called electromagnetic health sensitivity. Recent studies in many countries have indicated that more and more people are suffering from electromagnetic sensitivity, which can be very debilitating. It's thought to result from large changes in the immune system caused by continued exposure to microwave radiations, leading to chronic inflammation and allergic responses. The estimate of EHS vary from 3% to 10%. While Nigeria may not have the same teledensity as in developed world, where most of these studies have been done, we must emphasize growth in this regard and look forward to preventive and precautionary regulations. The precautionary principle that I mentioned earlier is a public policy approach to risk management of possible but unproven adverse effects. If we are concerned about radiofrequency exposure, we may apply precautionary principle by limiting the length of our calls on cell phones and using a hands-free device that keeps the cell phone away from your head and body as much and as comfortable as possible. Now, what is the position of the Nigerian Medical Association? In the foregoing of ranges of controversies on the inherent health dangers or otherwise of the radiofrequency radiation from base transmitter stations in Nigeria and world over, the references from reputable research work stated that here has rather given high credence to the fact that indeed there are inherent health hazards residents could face. Worse still, where the laid down regulations and guidelines are not strictly adhered to by the telecom companies inciting the base transmitter stations. Some of these proven health hazards include, but they are not limited to, fatigue, headache, decreased concentration, cancer, especially brain tumors, leukemia, viral and other infectious diseases because of lowering of immunity. Now, our recommendations. We recommend the introduction of antenna farm concepts. So before building a new antenna supporting structure, telecom providers must first utilize the options. That's consider sharing existing antenna system, modifying or replacing a structure if necessary. Locate, analyze, and attempt to use any feasible existing infrastructures, such as rooftops, water towers, etc. This method no doubt reduces the number of BTS in our environment if adopted by Nigeria. Enforcement of Nigerian regulatory bodies guidelines. The guidelines set for telecom companies for the establishment of DTS by NESTRIA and NCC must be fully enforced and violators sanctioned accordingly to prevent the inherent health hazard the BTS could pose if sited close to residential area. Another thing is for us to encourage more local researches, because there could be some things that are peculiar to our own people that we need to elucidate by way of researches. Governmental and non-governmental organizations and other independent bodies should encourage more scientific-based research and studies to unravel even yet to be identified health risks in our environment, Nigeria.
The presentation so far by NCC, Nigerian Society of Engineers, and the affiliates, as well as Nigerian Medical Association, they've put into perspective all what we are talking about, the issue of health implications of masks. Let me also point out, Mr. Chair, that along the line I've had few interventions or references to the mobile phones. I'm thinking that the presentation is more on the, as written there. Mr. Chair, the National Environmental Standards and Regulation Enforcement Agency, as far back as 2011, we had a regulation. The regulation came on board when we started receiving a lot of complaints from the public about the possible effects of radiation, noise from the generators, the spill from the generations, the vibrations. Based on that, we had started developing a regulation, a public regulation really, that involved both people from state and federal to make their input to developing a regulation. The regulation was made. The regulation specifies, Mr. Chairman, that there must be 10 meters from the fence of existing structure. Fence of existing structure. Yes, Mr. Chair. Then NCC before then has a regulation from its developed, that is 5-meter space. So we had, as the gentleman from NCC rightly said, we had a meeting, we had some understanding. For any new structure coming on board, must abide by these 10 meters. Where it becomes absolutely necessary that it cannot meet the 10 meters because of existing structures around that, 7.5 meters will be maintained. Where it's absolutely necessary that we cannot disrupt already existing structures, that will be maintained. Mr. Chairman, the regulation too specifies that every telecom operator must carry out environmental impact assessment before the construction of new masts. Environmental impact assessment, EIA is called, is essentially a process whereby if we do the needful, we'll be able to envisage what could be the possible impact of a project before it's even started. Mandatory that every new telecom mast must undergo EIA. By this EIA, Mr. Chairman, that means possibility of the noise, the local ecosystem I mean, in terms of the vegetation and all of that neighborhood. It also means, Mr. Chair, that every 3 years, there must be environmental audit. There must be environmental audit of every telemast. The whole purpose of this, Mr. Chair, is to make sure all what has been said by the environmental arm of Nigerian Society of Engineers to foresaw any possibility of environmental hazard or environmental problem, because they normally say, Mr. Chair, prevention is better than cure. But we will not lose sight, Mr. Chair. It is not just the radiation coming out from the telemast. A lot has been said about the radiation. Studies have been done about the radiation. You as you even alluded in your opening presentation, and we've heard from the audience here, there are different conflicting results in the sense that we're not too sure the basis of this result and other basis of the result. But as the man from the Nigerian Medical Association said, we should apply the precautionary principle. Nigeria was part of the United Nations Conference in 1992, where the whole concept of precautionary principle was agreed on. It's the polluter pays principle and the precautionary principle. To all of us, basically, precautionary principle means let us not wait till the overwhelming evidence of science before we can take action. The DTA, today, many production of science, what we have seen now as chemicals used before to do this, do that, when they were produced by man, it wasn't known that they're going to be carcinogenic. Now they all become carcinogenic. So that's the principle, that let us apply precautionary principle. Let us not wait for any overwhelming evidence before we can say this is not correct, this is not correct. And I think that is the way to go. I totally agree with the Nigerian Medical Association. And this is embedded, Mr. Chair, in the National Environmental Regulation for Telecoms. In addition to, we talked about the vibrations. The medical officer will bear us out. There's a lot of health implications. When you live close to a system, we are constantly under vibration. There is also big implication, Mr. Chair. If you are living in a house, next to your door, you're getting the exhaust fume from a generator. If there is incomplete combustion of that, you have a problem. We generate carbon dioxide. We generate from the fuel we use. We generate SOx, they call it oxides of sulfur. We generate NOx, oxides of nitrogen. But Mr. Chair, if there is incomplete combustion from a generator, we generate carbon monoxide. The carbon monoxide, Mr. Chair, it can kill instantly. If you breathe in carbon monoxide, after about 10, 15, 20 minutes, if there's no air ventilation, you are gone. This is why we see from time to time, we hear in the news, where families of 3, 4 may be sleeping because they put on their small generator. By morning, everybody is gone. It's because of the incomplete combustion coming from the generators. So we will be mindful, Mr. Chair, beyond the telecom mask, other things around making the system work. The generators, the oil spill from the generators. When you service these generators, how do you dispose the oil? You will have cases where they say the seepage of this waste oil entered local borehole for local community. These are the issues we need to look at, Mr. Chair. There are a lot of medical implications. Noise, Mr. Chair. It has a lot of psychological effect. When people are denied their sleep because of noise, we're now having various cases of suicide and all that. There are a lot of implications. The whole idea, Mr. Chair, is that let the telecom industry operate in a very environmental manner. I must point out, as you said it earlier, there will be some confusion in the earlier run between NESRA and NCC. It wasn't really a confusion, but it's more like understanding the issues. That the telecom industry, the telecom operators, they are beginning to follow the rules, but they need to do more. We have now situations now where they have to do the EIA. EIA is not done by NESRA. Every EIA document is submitted to our parent ministry. The responsibility of NESRA is to ensure that the provisions stated in EIA certificate is provided for, and that every telecom industry must carry out the 3 environmental audits for every 3 years.
But I don't know who this will be addressed to, but in the course of your deliberations, I just wanted to point out something, because as I was reading, and DG Nesra mentioned it, there's a 10-meter setback. If there was no problem, there won't be a 10-meter setback. It's simple logic. For there to be a 10-meter setback, if there was no issue, nobody would come up with. It's like when you're doing road construction and they say you have to have a setback. There's a reason for that setback. So if there's no problem, there won't be. So anybody saying that there's no problem citing a mast, and like you rightly said, precautionary is better than, oh, we should have done this. By then we would have lost a lot of people, then it would cost more money. Then also, I would also wanted to ask, the 3-year assessment, because really, before you go into anything, you must do, even these days, before you dig a borehole, you do environmental impact assessment. Even just the common borehole, hand pump, you do all those things. So, do they do the 3-year, have they been complying with that law, the 3-year impact assessment? Okay, so my chair is taking note of it. Those are part of the things I was taking note of. But please, I'll find out later, maybe by the time the report comes out, we'll know exactly some of these things.
We all recognize the importance of mobile phones and the need for these masts, but then appropriate sighting is vital and electromagnetic radiation output should be kept to an absolute minimum. I'm going to summarize. The worldwide Bills of Rights recognize that everyone has the right to an environment which is not harmful to their health and well-being. In addition, everyone has the right to have the environment protected for the benefit of present and future generations through reasonable legislative and other measures that prevent pollution and ecological degradation, promote conservation, and secure ecological resources while promoting justifiable economic and social development. I'm going to jump straight to a study that was conducted in France that found that intermittent but continuous exposure of human cells to a 50 Hz electromagnetic field induced a slight but significant increase in DNA fragmentation. The French report states that there are no demonstrated short-term effects, but that there are open questions about long-term effects, and that it is easy to reduce exposure via technological improvements. We have here that it is mandatory that the main antenna axis should not be directly located in front of living places at a distance shorter than 100 meters or within 100 meters radius of primary schools or child care facilities. The Nigerian standard for location of antenna or mast is 5 meters, and there does not appear to be any discrimination with respect to primary schools or child care facilities relative to international best practice. The WHO has flagged research into tower effects. This is because there are credible indications from reputable international research that show that exposure at very low levels could be a human and environmental health issue, but there is still a lack of research into the health impact of long-term exposure to electromagnetic radiation from towers, particularly on children who will have a lifetime of exposure at unprecedented levels. Thus, our current generation of children will have a lifetime exposure, and government has the responsibility to ensure emissions are as low as reasonably achievable in line with international best practice. Other countries have much lower emission standards than Nigeria, and yet they operate fully functional mobile telecom networks. So our recommendations include that there is need to conduct independent assessment of electromagnetic radiation output at every tower, particularly those close to buildings, to confirm industry claims and or ascertain that the limits are not being exceeded. 2, that there is need for the establishment of a single, impartial, and empowered review body for Nigeria. 3, that for Nigeria, masts have been located close to primary schools for as long as they have been in existence. There is therefore a need to conduct a retrospective study on the exposed children for possible adverse health conditions that may have resulted from their exposure. Then we align with the NMA in requesting a precautionary principle to be enshrined in the legislation of Nigeria.